My name is Greg Landry. I'm one of the lawyers here at Louisiana Legal Service, and for the next 15 minutes or so we're going to be running through how Prime's document tracking system works. The purpose of this document management system is so that if you have people who need to both work on a file at the same time, they're both able to see the documents in that file without having to hunt down the paper file. It's especially helpful if you have people in different offices who need to do that, or a supervisor who wants to do a file review and may not be in the same office. There are some prerequisites to using this sort of software. You should already have in place, before you do this, a document management system. I'll give you an idea of what some of the best practices are in that regard. A firm-wide system, as I mentioned earlier, is probably easier for supervision and co-counseling. If you have some central repository where all client documents are stored and backed up, there's some sort of organized structure, you have conventions that you have agreed upon for how you're going to name and structure folders and files, then it lets everything gets backed up and gives you an idea about what's going on. Let me show you a sample of what that might look like here. This is a sample of a folder structure you might want to use. Up at the top, you can see there's just a server. Someplace up at the top, there's a document server that everybody stores their materials on. Under that, you would have folders for things like substantive practice materials. You'd have a folder to hold all of your pleadings, or a folder to hold all of your research on public housing or disability. Another folder at that top level might be for specific client materials. This is stuff that's not for the farm bank, not to be recycled, not generally used, but just for that particular client. And then under that, you'd have two different folders, one for your closed cases and one for open. You might want to then divide your open cases further by splitting them up by either practice group or the different kinds of problem codes that we use, further dividing them. And then at the very bottom level of your folder structure, you would have a folder for each client. The naming convention we use for folders here is last name, all caps, first name, file number, and then what sort of file it is, what sort of case. If you follow that sort of a convention, it makes it pretty easy to go back and find what you're looking for. You can go back and search by client's last name, and you see if you have a client with more than one file, one of them will say testament at the end, another one might say power of attorney, another one might say will, another one might say pleadings for a contract dispute, whatever it is. But this sort of a structure gives you a way for everyone to put stuff in a location where you have a good chance of finding it again later. If that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to you, let me give you sort of an analogy. Right now, if you think about paper files, the big filing cabinet someplace in your office where you store client files, well, that's like what server you're storing stuff on. A server is just one central spot where you're going to put all of your client files. Then for each client, you might have one of these accordion-style folders, and everything for that client is going to go into that accordion folder. The digital equivalent of that would be a client's folder sitting someplace on that server. And then within that big accordion folder, if it's a case that's complicated, you've got lots of pleadings and research and client documents and exhibits, then you would have further within the accordion folder individual manila folders for each particular type of document. And one folder would say pleadings, and one would say exhibits, and one would say client documents. And the equivalent of that when you get to the client level on a digital storage system would be individual folders for each type of document that you're going to be working for. So that's the idea of a document storage system that's consistent across all of your offices, all of your delivery units, all of your substantive practice areas. And all that Prime does is let you link files that you've created for a client from the Prime file that you're working on out to wherever you happen to have stored it on the server. So this is a sample database we're working in. I'm not working with live client data. This is a sample client that I've created in our training database. Any of you will be able to get to this file or any other one in your training database and look at it, play with it, see how you might want to be able to use it. The document tracking system itself is found on intake page 2, so I'm going to click that tab up at the top, and the screen refreshes. At the bottom near the left, we have a button that says Document Tracking, and that's where Prime's document tracking system is accessed. So I'm going to click on that, and we get a new little pop-up. Let me sort of pull that to the middle of the screen so you can all see it better. And you see I've put in a couple of sample documents here already, a letter to a client, an agenda for a business meeting. These are just samples that I've put in to give you some idea of what sort of documents you might be able to store there. So what we're going to do now is link a new document to this client. Let's suppose we have done some legal research for this client. We did our legal research in Westlaw or Lexis or whatever case research system we use. We've stored that in our document management system to a particular folder for that client, which probably says something like client research. Let me see if I've got a sample I can pull up for you real quick. Okay, let's go to this client is Mr. Track D Papers. So we're going to open up his folder, and we're going to look. We've already stored a folder for legal research, and we have a file there. The file is called Bergeron v. Parker, and that's a case that we researched that we want to use. We've already done our research. We've stored it into the client's folder, and now we want to link this in Prime so we don't have to keep jumping out to the server looking for that document. So let me go back to Prime, and we're going to link that document, that legal research. We're going to go to any place on the screen, doesn't matter, and click the button that says Add. It's a gray button at the top center of the screen. And in this case, it happens to already be on that. So let me back up a bit so you can see exactly what we're going to do. We would say Add. We want to add papers for this client. And legal research is what we're adding. And we want to add that Bergeron v. Parker case. We just double-click it or say Open. And what Prime has done is list that document as a new document that we're tracking. We can then fill in some of these other fields which will help us file it and categorize it later. It's, let's call it an article, date added, who added it, notes, lead case on the contract cancellation issue. These notes, whatever you type into that field, are later going to be searchable within Prime. So if years from now you think, gee, I did a contract cancellation case, but I can't remember the name of the client, you can go back in Prime, search for the word cancellation in the notes field, and it'll pull up this particular document because it's already been categorized that way. This is a case that we might want to use later. So down here where it says what priority is this, we don't really want to add this to our brief bank. It's not a brief, but we're going to call it medium high priority. What category? This lets us categorize it by whatever kind of problem codes we're using. So on this one, I'm going to make it a contract issue. We can pick a subcategory if we want, consumer contracts. The buttons immediately to the right of those fields are for pleadings, where you can check off, has this pleading already been filed, and if so, on what date was it filed? And then you can go back and search for pleadings that were already filed. So we could add this document, and I'm going to add a couple in here just so that you can see what's going on. This is a PDF file, which means it's an Adobe Acrobat file. Above it, you can see I've added a WordPerfect document. And above that, the very first document is a Word document. But we're going to add a couple of others just so you can see that you can tack just about anything onto this. Let's say we have a picture of the site of the dispute, and it's Adverse Parties Office Building. Let's pick that. That's a JPEG, which is a kind of a picture. And you can see now it's added this picture as a document that we want to track. I don't know if we have a choice in here. Yeah, we do. Photograph, picture of dispute site. Not going in the brief bank. Very limited interest. And again, this is a contracts case. Right. It's not something that's going to get filed. If you wanted to add a Word document from another folder, you would just say add. And let's say a pleading. Pleadings here. We'll go in quickly and grab a pleading. This is a petition. And this petition is a complaint. This is going to go in our brief bank, and again, it's a contract case. And you would just keep adding whatever you wanted to add in this situation. You can print, if you're getting ready to go to court, a list of all your documents, and then you can put that in the file folder, and you know exactly what you've got ready. If there's a particular document you want to work with, I'll pick the first one. You just say Open, and it's going to open that document. A second for your screen to refresh here. It's going to open that document on the server in the format that you're using. Oh, it didn't open on your screen. Here it is. There it comes. And then you can edit the document, you can revise the document, you can print the document without having to go start Word, go back through that folder search and find your actual document. You can do it all from within the program itself, right from within Prime. Let's see what else you can do. To delete a document, you would highlight the one you want, click on the button that says delete. It does not delete the actual document, it just deletes the little link that Prime was storing to the document, so that now that one's not there anymore. You can track where the pleadings are filed. We talked about that. I think the very last thing I want to show you here is about the search function. So I'm going to close out this client, and we'll run back to search, documents, and just for a quick example, I'll let you see what happens if we search for this client's name. We've got several documents that we've stored, all for people whose last name is Papers, and it's the documents that we just put in there, and it does not show the one that was deleted anymore. When you're done working on these and you want to move them over to another folder, Prime has a built-in system for you to just move all of them at one time to a closed documents folder, and you just need to have a place set up for it to go, and it'll be glad to move that folder, the whole folder, over for you. Right. The program that actually runs when you click on a document is not a program that's sitting on your computer, but a program that's on the server. So if the server that we store Prime on has a program that will read that document, then it'll open it. Let me see what you're looking at now. Okay, on the screen you see we have a PDF document that we've stored. I'm going to say open. Yeah, this is the PDF file that we stored. This is the copy of a case, and it's running on the server over in the New Orleans area. So currently you're able to store and read PDF files. We can see that. The software, again, that you're going to be using to open any of these files is sitting on the server. So if we haven't purchased licenses for the newest version of Word or WordPerfect or Adobe Acrobat, any of that, if we haven't purchased those licenses as a state, as a working group, and put them up on that server, then you're right. It's not going to open it up. And for some, like right now, it won't open WordPerfect at all. This document is going to open in Word if we open it, because we don't have WordPerfect licenses on the server. Let me move on. I've got a question from David over there. He wants to know if the directory the file was in before you linked the document was deleted, does Prime retain a copy? And the answer is no. Prime retains copies of none of your documents. It is not a document storage system. It's a document tracking system. If you delete the document, all that Prime has is a link to where you used to have it, which is another reason why all your documents should be stored on a central server that's being backed up on a daily basis, so that if someone accidentally kills off your directory, you can go back to the tape or the hard disk copy and restore it.
Greg?
Yes.
Okay, so if you move the file, the document started from your current case files to your closed case folders, does Prime know where you moved it?
If you move it outside of Prime, it won't know, because what it's storing, as you can see here on the screen, it's storing right there the link to where you put that document. But if you move it from within Prime, it will store the new link. If you see to the right of what's highlighted on your screen, there's a button that says Move Files.
Yeah.
When you click that, it brings up a new box, and you can choose a new place to move your files. For example, I want to move all the stuff for this client from open to closed files. If you then create the folder and move the files, Prime will update its links and know that this is no longer an open file, but all of these files are now linked to a closed file folder on your server someplace. I saw one from David. I see a question here from Lewis.
Yes, I was just wondering about opposing pleadings, petitions that you're answering. You want to get those into document tracking?
Yes. What we do here is run them through the scanner, store them as a PDF, put it on the server, and then link to that on the server. Let me see if I've got a sample of that I could pull up and show you what that looks like. A PDF is an Adobe Acrobat file, and just about any scanner nowadays will be able to store stuff in that format. Okay, so this one, Lewis, would be an example up on the screen. In the folder for this client's pleadings, we have the original petition, and then we got back an amending and supplemental answer. So it was scanned and stored as a PDF. You might have the same sort of thing in Discovery. Let's here. These are adverse parties documents, our documents. If he sends them to you in Word format or WordPerfect, you store them like that. If he emails them to you, if you get them on paper, then the only way to get them digital is to scan them. If you want more information on this, you can find a quick synopsis in the help system in Prime. Go to the main help screen and search help and type document. The very first answer that comes up is document tracking. So that's one way to get a quick refresher about how this all works. The other way is with the scheduling of this webinar, we sent out a copy of the manual, and there's a copy of a full, very detailed manual with screenshots on Pro Bono Net, Louisiana. Look in the library under the Prime folder.